I grew up in East Lansing, just off campus, in a neighborhood full of kids. Had a great childhood. I was always thinking about the meaning of life, whether it was National Geographic magazines from my dad or the natural history museums my mom took me to. I remember being pretty convinced there was no God. I remember building a fort in the backyard, and we are doing a little lean-to along the fence, and the kids said, "Hey, let's build a church." And I was like, "Why? Everybody knows there's no such thing as God." That was about 4 years old. I would just sit in my basement and kind of be that weird contemplative kid, just wondering, why are we here? What if we're just part of somebody's dream? And what if they woke up? And I remember being nervous about that. When I was 9 years old, a moving truck showed up at our house. My dad was leaving, and none of us saw it coming. My mom went to the bank across the street, and all our money was gone. I was alone. I felt super scared, and I think I even got depressed. I had always done well in school. I wanted to be the best, but it just wasn't making me happy at all. I turned to sports. I made a travel soccer team, excelled in hockey, but it wasn't making me any happier either. It just wasn't working. In eighth grade, I started dating. Finally, this is what I've been looking for. And at first it worked, but then the infatuation wore off, and then came the breakups. And I remember feeling lonelier than I did at the outset. In eighth grade, I got one of those green Gideon's Bibles they give out at schools sometimes, and I thought I knew what religion was all about, getting people to obey the rules, fit into society, but I was wrong. And as I read Jesus' teachings, I was intrigued. At the front of the Bible, there was a short presentation about knowing God personally, and I remember reading that God had created me to know Him, and just feeling overwhelmed, even as I contemplated that. And yet my sin separated me from God, and I didn't really put up much of a fight as I read that, because I was pretty aware of where I was at and the state of my heart, and kind of my anger, where it was leaving me. But then I read that even despite my sin, Jesus died so that I didn't have to be good enough to measure up to try and get to God on my own, because I couldn't, and I recognized that. And I remember feeling so overwhelmed with love. But the truth is, other than internally, externally, my life really didn't change that much. I didn't really get what it would look like to live for Jesus until the junior year of high school, through a conversation with a friend. I remember reading through the book of Matthew, a short history of Jesus' life in the Bible, and he was really addressing anger and looking for fulfillment in romantic relationships and sexuality. And I realized this guy understands me to a T as a high schooler. Um, and he began to show me this was not going to lead to happiness and the meaning I was looking for. And so I began to let go. And I think if you knew me the next day at school, you would have said, "What the heck got into Dan?" As I was saying sorry for stuff I had done, and just seeking to live a different way. That was 20 years ago. The pressure is still there, if I'm honest. Good grades, success at sports, they're not there so much, but success at work, living the American dream, the pressure is still there. But God is continually showing me His love and acceptance that isn't based on my performance. C.S. Lewis wrote, "If I find in myself a desire that no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable explanation is I was made for another world." And through coming to know Jesus, I can let go of looking for ultimate meaning in romantic relationships, in my marriage, in my kids, even, in friendships, in work, and being outdoors. And that actually allows me to enjoy those things even more as a gift from God, rather than something I'm trying to cling to give me meaning. Thanks so much for taking a minute to listen.